So no, I don't think it's the end of the world as we know it. I think it's just that we're being fed this idea to believe one way or another. I don't think it's the end of the world as we know it. There's a lot going on in the world today, and if you turn on the news, you see all sorts of things being told to us, all sorts of things being sold to us with various political angles and with various ideas. Each one, of course, with their own agenda, each one with their kind of own reasoning to why they want to convince us to see the world a certain way. But a lot of this is just not true. A lot of this is for political posturing. It's for validation, to keep you and I tuned into the news networks for 24 hours a day. It doesn't make any sense. But on the other hand, it makes all the sense in the world. So here's what I think. If you're judging based purely off of the personality of conflict, right? If you're basing everything off of how people behave, this whole theory makes perfect sense, okay? Let me tell you how I got to the idea that this is not going to be World War III. World War III is where you have a lot of people who hold different ideologies, large sections of the world. I want you to think communism versus democracy, okay? That's one aspect of this, right? What we're seeing in the Middle East right now and what we're seeing throughout the world right now is not World War III. I get asked this question a lot because there's no real ideology at play here. Now, there's a lot of theology at play here, but not ideology. A lot of people say that Russia is going to get involved, China is going to get involved. I don't think so. They don't want to get involved in a war that's based on theocracy. Now, some people might say that they're going to get involved because of the economics of this whole thing. I don't think so either. I don't think there's any behavior pattern that shows that. They are not interested. What we could end up with, and what I think would be the likely scenario in this case, would be a very broad regional war, okay? Where other sides are offering assistance. Now, like say the United States would probably offer some assistance to Israel. China and Russia would offer some assistance to Iran and to Khomeini. You'd probably see some assistance being spread out from the Gulf states there for Iran, simply because they hold a theological interest in this whole mess. The biggest problem I think that would happen, obviously, is the Straits of Hormuz. And as somebody who's covered these situations throughout my career, you see that's the most logical choke point if you're Iran. Would they directly attack the U.S.? No, I don't think so. But there is a part of this fear that could be realized. They would probably attack synagogues. They would probably attack churches. All of this diversion that we see, resources going to the border states, all these ICE raids, stuff like that, would probably be our biggest threat to national security here in the United States. And nobody's really talking about that, because if you take away all of this stuff and you say, okay, look, you know what, we need to be more on guard for our mosques, our synagogues, our churches, things like that, those are likely targets for the Iranians. They're not going to shoot a nuclear missile over here. They don't have one. And even if they did, that's a whole other topic. But what I'm telling you here, the personality of conflict in this whole thing, is not that there would be a traditional war in the sense that we think of World War III. This would definitely be a boots on the ground kind of untraditional war, especially if you're in places like the United States, London, Paris, places like that. These battles are going to be much different. I think they're going to be fought in our local trenches. And that's why we need to protect ourselves more from the outside threat than these politicized things like immigration and so forth that really don't, you could have the debate really don't matter or not, you know? But we need to start putting the focus on preparing ourselves. Now, we can have the debate, does that mean more law enforcement on the streets? What does that mean? You could have, debates about whether we need cameras, stuff like that. Just like after 9/11, probably some things would change. You're going to give up some freedom. That's just the way that it works. It happened after 9/11. This whole thing is a regional war that's going to force a social change in places like the United States. I think that's where people like Donald Trump are kind of getting this thing twisted a little bit, and where they're finding themselves caught in the catch-22 here, right? Is they realize this, and his body language, the words that he's using, the whole 9 yards is saying, Jesus Christ, I'm caught in the middle of this here. I don't know what to do. He's trying to put on a good face, but deep down he's getting this expression that says, I don't know what to do. And a lot of people, when they get themselves in these situations, if you read their body language and you read their posturing and you read their personalities and things like this, you see that they end up getting caught in these situations, and they end up getting caught in these moral and social dilemmas. You see, Trump has pretty much made his bed that, okay, ICE is the domestic issue that we're going to deal with. Immigration is going to be the problem. Tariffs are going to be the problem I'm going to deal with today. But deep down, his advisors are telling him, no, we need to worry about this problem because this is happening now, and you've diverted all of our time, energy, resources, personnel to this problem. A much lesser problem if you really think about it. This is what we call bad decision making. So I don't want to get into the debate here whether or not Trump is capable of making a good decision. You can come up with that on your own. But I think if you look at this, he's stuck, and his posturing is telling us that he's stuck. I don't think Trump is the only one that's stuck. I think some of the leaders in the Gulf states are stuck. I think that if you watch their eyes and the words that they're saying, limited as they may be, this is a real dilemma for a lot of people. So is this going to be World War III? I don't think so. I think it's going to be a regional war that spreads. And a regional war that spreads can be a real problem no matter how you look at it. It really can be. So, I don't know. I think you just kind of put yourself in this situation to take a look at things. You watch, you wait, and you weigh the consequences. That's how things happen. You have to weigh the consequences. And I think in the end, the American people, we're going to be the ones that pay the consequences because we're going to have to give up the most. Financially and within our social circles, our behavior. Much like what happened after 9/11. That's what I think. I think we're going to have to give up some freedoms in order to protect ourselves. And is that something that the American people are going to want to do? That's a real tough question. Are we willing to sacrifice our freedom, our way of life, and our philosophy for a little country 2/3 the way across the world? Are we willing to sacrifice that? That's the question that we, the people of the United States, are going to have to ask ourselves. And I think that's the question the president's asking himself today.